The movie begins with David going to his girlfriend Jade at a show. He sits next to her while everyone looks at them, knowing how strong their relationship is, even though David is a few years older than her, but they have always been deeply in love. At night, David gets dressed, takes a walk, and goes to tell his parents that he is heading out to Jay's, but he finds them both busy with their work, so he leaves them and goes to Jay's house. He finds her outside waiting for him, wearing a beautiful white dress, and she welcomes him warmly. He was going to her house to spend time with her and her family and celebrate Halloween together. When he enters, he greets her brother Keith and her father Hugh, and they all go to receive her mother as she comes down the stairs, dressed up as a Chinese princess from the Carns. After that, they all sit down to eat and talk, and the parents knew that David and Jay were very close and passionately in love. After dinner, the party starts. All of Keith and Jade's school friends arrive, throwing a celebration in the house, singing and playing music. Jade is sitting in her father's lap, but she leaves him to go sit with David on the stairs, which catches her brother's and father's attention, bothering them to see how close she is to David. After the party ends, they start cleaning everything up. Hugh then tells David, "Turn off the light behind you on your way out." David replies, "All right, I'm leaving, uncle," but mischievous David doesn't leave. He turns back, waits for Jay to come down, and they spend the night together. Her mother hears a noise and thinks there are burglars in the house, but when she goes downstairs, she finds them together. She had always been jealous of the intense love between David and her daughter Jay due to the coldness in her own marriage. The next day, David takes Jay on his bicycle to ride around town and hang out. When they return home, David learns that they are going duck hunting tomorrow. Jade tells him that Hugh has loved hunting for a long time and taught Keith so he could go with him. David says, "All right, great, I'll go with them too." Indeed, the next morning, David goes hunting with Keith. He really likes the old cabin owned by Hugh and tells Keith, "By the way, this cabin is really nice. Later, Jay and I will come spend a few days here together." Keith responds, "Just because you love Jay doesn't make you family." This sentence bothers David immensely. The following morning, Hugh wakes up and finds David in Jay's room, not fully dressed, which makes him extremely angry and upset. He goes downstairs and says, "I can't take this anymore. What does it mean that I wake up and find David spending the night in Jay's room? We are to blame. We removed the boundaries between him and us and allowed him to come and go whenever he pleases, only for the sake of our daughter." Hugh decides he must put an end to this farce. On one day, David is sitting studying, and his father comes in to check on him. Afterwards, David calls Jay, and they sit talking together. Late at night, David decides to go to Jay's at that late hour. He actually leaves, goes to her house, goes up to her room completely normally, and stays the night with her. The next morning, Hugh looks out the window and sees David leaving the house, riding his bike, and going away. Furious, he goes to his daughter's room and finds her in the bathroom trying to take sedative pills. He yells at her, saying, "You are never going back to this filth again," since she had a problem with drugs and sedatives specifically, "or else you will cut off your relationship with this David completely and never see him again. I will not allow what is happening in my house." She confronts him and says, "It's impossible that I'll let you separate us. I love him and I will never leave him." Her mother tries to calm her down. The next day, David rides his bike to Jay's house and runs into Keith, whom he greets, but Keith ignores him. He then goes to greet Hugh, telling him he is going inside to see Jay. But her father says, "Stop right there, don't ever enter this house again, David." David asks, "Why, uncle?" Hugh answers, "I made a mistake when I gave you the freedom to come and go as you please. I do not approve of your relationship with my daughter. I think you two shouldn't see each other for 30 days so I can decide whether you should continue together or not." David says, "That's impossible. I love her and I can't stay away from her for even a single day." He tries to force his way into the house, but Hugh grabs him and shoves him outside, and they almost get into a fight. However, Jay's mother holds Hugh back, calms him down slightly, and tells him, "All right, look, you go inside and I'll talk to David." She tells David that the relationship between him and Jay has become boundaryless and that they are both still young, which Hugh will never accept. She asks him to try to endure these 30 days until her father cools down so he can try to return to her again. David tries to object, but she tells him, "Son, don't let Hugh do something to you that he will regret later. She is our daughter too, and what's happening between you two is unacceptable." David leaves, and his connection with Jay is completely severed. He doesn't visit her, nor does she talk to him. He only sees her at school from afar. Sometimes she sees him and they sit looking at each other, and sometimes he sits watching her from a distance. It was a very difficult time for both of them. One day, David is sitting in his room playing music at a very high volume. His mother enters, screams at him, and tells his father that if their son continues like this, he will go crazy, do something dangerous, and get arrested. Suddenly, David decides to leave the house, go out, and head to Jay's house in the forest. He arrives, gets closer, and finds that they are throwing a huge party. He remains watching from afar until the party ends, seeing his beloved Jay standing with a boy, saying goodbye to him. When she goes inside, he follows behind her and tries to call out to her, but she doesn't hear him. He waits until everyone falls asleep and tries to reach her, but fails. He thinks of a way to catch her attention, so he grabs some gasoline, lights some newspapers outside the house, and steps away waiting for Jay to notice. Shortly after, he sees a bright light coming from the house, and as he approaches, he finds that the entire house has caught fire. He tries to extinguish it, but can't, and the whole house burns down. He goes inside, wakes them up, and tries to rescue them as they are all terrified, trying to get out. David tries to search for Jay, but he runs into Keith and they fight. Keith knocks him to the ground, causing him to lose consciousness, but Hugh saves him, and they all make it out of the house at the last moments. David is charged with arson, tried in court, and found guilty by the judge, who sentences him to 5 years in prison, to be served in a psychiatric hospital, with no release until it is proven that he is no longer a danger to anyone around him. He enters the hospital, and the first night is extremely difficult as he is surrounded by people suffering from severe mental illnesses, knowing he won't be able to endure it. A few days later, his mother visits him, and he tells her, "I must get out of here right now, I can't stand it," but she tells him he must endure and not act rashly so they don't claim he is still a danger and keep him locked up. He spends very difficult days, dreaming of his beloved Jay every night, writing letters periodically and handing them to the nurse to send to Jay. Whenever he stands in front of the mirror, he sees Jay standing next to him. Days pass, and after 2 years, his parents visit him. David breaks down completely and begs them to take him with them because he can no longer stay in the hospital. His family manages to convince the judge that he has recovered and is no longer a danger, so the judge rules for his release under house arrest at his parents' home, with a travel ban, warning that if he does anything wrong, he will return to the hospital. When Hugh learns that David was released, he goes and causes chaos at the hospital, saying, "How could you let him out? He wanted to kill me and burned my house to get rid of me and my family. If I so much as see him or if he tries to hurt me, I will come back and ruin your house." When David enters his room, his father tells him, "Don't worry, son, everything will be fixed and will become better than before. You will finish your studies and go out to see your friends." David says, "I don't want to see anyone, I want to see Jay." His father tells him, "Son, they moved away, left the entire state, and went to New York." David replies, "I can't stay away from her, I must reach her." His father goes and hands him the letters David had written to Jay in the hospital, letters that were never sent and never reached her, and tells him to forget her and focus on his future. However, David decides he must see her. He travels to New York and manages to get her mother's address, visiting her where she lives alone after her separation from Hugh. As soon as she sees him, she says, "I knew you would come visit me, and Hugh also knew you would come to me first." David says, "It's good to see you, I missed you." She welcomes him warmly. At night, she takes him out for dinner, telling him that Hugh divorced her and moved on with a young girl whom he will marry soon, while Jay is studying at university. When they return home, she tells him she wrote a book, being a successful author, and that the novel was inspired by his and Jay's love story, as she was always deeply moved seeing them together and envious of their love. She tells David, "Come sit next to me, David," and in a moment of weakness, she tries to get close to him, but David stops her and steps back, still deeply in love with Jay and determined to reach her. He tells her it's late and he must leave. She asks, "Do you have a place to stay?" He says no, so she says, "All right, you'll sleep here on the sofa, and in the morning I'll leave." When she goes inside, David notices an address book and finds Hugh and Jay's address. In the morning, he goes out walking in the city, waiting for the bus that will take him to Jay. As he walks down the street and crosses the road, he suddenly sees Hugh standing on the other side. Hugh sees him too and realizes he came looking for his daughter. Hugh tries to walk over to fight him, but a car hits Hugh, and people gather around him while his girlfriend tries to save him. David goes over to check on him, and Hugh's girlfriend sees David standing next to her. David sits at the bus station crying, unable to board the bus to Jay, and turns back because her girlfriend opens the door for him crying, telling him that Hugh died. Inside, he finds Keith and Hugh's girlfriend Ingrid. Keith says, "What are you doing here, kid?" David replies, "I'm looking for Jay." Keith says, "My father is dead, isn't what happened to us enough?" David says, "I didn't hate your father." Keith tells him, "Jay hates you, don't look for her again." Ingrid tries to intervene and says, "I'm sorry, you must leave, David. Try to stay at a hotel until morning." He hands her the letter he wrote for Jay and asks her to give it to her. When he goes downstairs, he sees Jay arriving at the hotel, heading up to her mother and brother. At David's parents' house, they keep searching for him, not knowing where he is and terrified he might do something and get arrested. David is sitting in his hotel room when someone knocks on the door. He opens it to find Jay. She tells him her mother gave her the letters and asks, "What brought you here?" He says, "I'm looking for you." She tells him, "By the way, I'm not worth looking for. I didn't even try to write to you or contact you while you were locked up." She says that what was between them is over and they must both move on, asking him to take care of himself. She turns to leave, but he breaks down, grabs her, stops her from walking away, and says, "No, what's between us can't end. I still love you and I won't let you leave." She cries and tells him she never forgot him and still loves him, staying the night with him. Keith and Ingrid go to the hotel where David is staying and call him down. When he comes down with Jay, Ingrid points at him and tells them, "That's the guy who was there when Hugh died." Keith looks at Jay and says, "It's certainly no coincidence, Jay, he's the one who killed our father." Jay looks at David and says, "Tell them they are lying, David," but he couldn't deny it, telling her it was against his will and he didn't mean to. Keith grabs him and beats him, and they fight until the police arrive and take David away. Later, we see Jay walking with her mother, telling her she misses her father very much and still remembers all their times together, but she can't forget David and has never loved anyone as much as him. Her mother tells her, "My daughter, you are still young and life is ahead of you, you will love, make mistakes, and learn." In the end, we see David standing at a window while locked up, with Jay coming towards him from afar, and with that, our movie ends. If you liked the movie, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell button to receive everything new we offer.